morning. Welcome to the PME 360 Powering Business Growth Show. Each week we talk about the issues and offer advice, how to power growth for your local business, and solve some of the challenges that your small or medium-sized business may be having. I'm your host, Ron Rohde Jr. With me as always, the man with the plan, our marketing man, my main man, Mr. Ryan Paul Adams. Ryan, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Ron. I can't believe it's another Friday here. It's crazy.
I know. Tell me about it. Hey, Ryan, how's that book coming along that you're writing? I'm looking forward to reading it.
Went to the editor today, and it looks like final wrap-up and cover design is being completed. Should be out within the next 7 to 10 days. So.
Excellent.
It's been a long process, so yeah, we're excited.
Excellent. Very excited. Also, happy to have with us today Tim Stone, owner and managing partner, Bullet Consulting Group, an agile, no-nonsense consulting firm that helps small businesses take IT off their lists of headaches. With more than 40 years of combined experience on a small elite team, Bullet Consulting are well-versed in the totality of their clients' needs, from system administration to fast troubleshooting. Mr. Stone specializes in business automation and medical software packages. On the business side, he employs SQL reporting solutions to help businesses reduce data entry time and improve productivity. In medical software, he implements and supports sophisticated forward-thinking solutions like GlowStream that enable practices to go paperless quickly and smoothly. His company, Bullet Group Consulting, can also help clients with any technology needs, from email servers to cloud solutions to equipment purchases. Tim, good morning. Thank you for your time. Nice to have you. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
How are you this morning?
Very well. Thank you for being prepared and presenting some great slides today. Excited to have you on for a webinar and a Q&A.
Hopefully we have some good information to share.
Thank you, Tim, for doing this.
Absolutely. So, Tim, we run into it all the time, small businesses that are having challenges with IT, and I know we're going to talk about how we can solve some challenges and how Bullet Group Consulting solves some of those challenges specifically. So when you're ready, Tim, if you'd like to go ahead and kick off, and Ryan and I will go ahead and interject and provide some value for some of our listeners here today.
Sure. So let me start by telling you, read my bio, but Bullet Group, we're in downtown Chicago, and we specialize in helping small and medium-sized businesses easily and inexpensively solve their IT needs. We're not, cousin Fred's nephew who comes and tries to make it up as they go along. We're, IT professionals. We try to give our clients, from the smallest to the biggest, the same level of service that you would get in a fully staffed corporate IT department, but at a cost, in responsiveness to small business needs. We're not there to learn on the job. Because, in today's technology landscape, there's a lot of things that small businesses need to take care of. And so many of them, go to Best Buy, buy whatever's on sale, take it home, and try to run their massive business on this $300 computer.
Yep.
And they get hacked, and they get spam, and they get viruses, and it crashes, and, oh, well, I backed up 3 years ago. Is that good enough? And that really, they run into a lot of problems.
Yeah, I would imagine. Actually, we see it. Yep.
Oh, we see it every day, and people, IT is always the expensive person in the corner that you keep going, why do I spend so much money? Why do I spend so much money? And when you have a problem, you're running up and down the hall screaming for where are they to fix things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, you got to look at IT. You got to look at IT as an investment rather than expense, right? So to protect your business and really solidify what you have, it's really an investment. That's the way I've always tried to look at it.
And you have to. I mean, you are on your computer probably all day, sitting in front of it doing whatever, and yet some people will have computers that are, 8 years old.
Right.
And they joke in the morning, well, I turn my computer on, then I get a cup of coffee, and I go to the bathroom, and I get my bagel, and come back, and I can finally start doing something. They waste
Right.
so much time with old equipment, which is the first thing I want to talk about, which,
Great.
There's kind of a difference between things you use at home and the things you use at business. Your home PC, do you want a Mac or do you want a PC? It's probably a good place to start. Macs are making a huge inroads. They're very easy to use. A lot of people like them. It's easy for the kids. The schools use them. And if your business is only writing an occasional letter, doing email, surfing the web, Macs are fine for work. But if you've got a business application, whether it's a legal piece of software like Time Matters or some fancy accounting program like Great Plains or whatever it is, as soon as you have that business piece of software, you can't have your Mac at work.
Right.
You got to run in emulation mode, and then you're paying for more expensive equipment to actually run something else, and you're wasting your time. And that's where I start with people about, do you want PCs or Macs? Can you make that decision? And then it's the home versus business. At home, you can get away with that $300 piece of equipment that you got at Best Buy because you can use the cheap licensing. You can use the Microsoft Office for home. That you can't take that home software like that Windows 7 Home and that they sell you because it's inexpensive. You don't want that at work. It doesn't have the security, and most of it's not licensed anywhere. And then as we were alluding to, equipment age. If you're getting your cup of coffee and getting your morning breakfast before your computer comes online, you've got to be wasting so much time in the course of the day.
Sure.
When you can't get, PowerPoint and Word and Excel and, 10 web pages open,
Yeah.
You're not going to be very efficient. There aren't a lot of small businesses that open one document and sit and type on it all day.
Now you've
I
got
know.
multiple windows open all day long, and multiple browsers in some instances, right? Multiple browsers, multiple documents, and you're multitasking. And
Right.
A slow system shuts you down.
It does, and it's people that have never experienced a fast computer because they are still running, there was Windows XP, with an ancient version of software. They're like, well, that's how I work. I'm like, well, why don't you get one monitor running, your email, and your other one, web browser, whatever you're looking at, and going back and forth, and can be very efficient. It'd be nice to be able to get your work done in a shorter period of time rather than having to work late because your computer's so slow.
Sure.
Because wouldn't we all like more time in the day?
Absolutely.
And then quickly, just a little note there at the bottom. When you go to the store to buy, whether you're ordering it from Dell or picking it up at the corner store, I tell people, buy Windows 7 Pro, which is what you need in the business, 8 gig of RAM, and Microsoft Office Home in the business. All the other features, you don't care about. The 8 gig of RAM is an important little feature. You need the right license of Microsoft Office. Whether you have a terabyte hard drive or a 300 gig hard drive, it just doesn't matter. One other little note on licensing, which I run into all the time with small businesses, is having, they buy a computer and it comes with the disks, and then they try to run around to all their other computers and install the same software. And that's not appropriate. It's illegal, and as the more software vendors, really, when you install their software, it's going out and checking whether it's been installed before. At home, the home version of most Microsoft products, you can install on several computers. At the office, there are almost always one license per computer. It's not worth, I think the minimum fine is $250,000. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah.
Really expensive. Yeah, they take that stuff pretty seriously. So at work, it's just not worth, a couple $100 to have the right software as opposed to getting in trouble with software police. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but when somebody sends me an email and it's like, Chicago lawyer at AOL.com or something like that, I look at that and I'm like, you could get your own email address for $10.
Right. It's not that hard.
Totally.
Yeah. And you put it on your business card, and it all just looks more professional.
Yeah. We see it all the time, and, it's funny because a lot of these people, they'll spend a ton of money on marketing, and they're branding their domain and their website. And like you said, it's a perfect example, Billy Bob 6 at AOL, or like you said, even more, a little bit cleaner than that, right? So Chicago lawyer at AOL. You can always transfer you can always forward your branded email to a personal email, but yeah, never use a personal email on your business card or anywhere else for that matter.
Yeah, and
It's a great way to separate the two.
in about 5 minutes in Gmail too, you can set up a branded email account just using a forward and a reply to field in the settings. So if you're comfortable with Gmail, you can still use it branded.
Yeah,
it just takes a few minutes.
There's, whether it's Gmail or whether it's, Office 365 or,
Sure, yep.
You can even do it through, GoDaddy, the domain that you buy it from. I think their service is $4.99 a month or something like that. It's so easy. And go ahead.
No. Are you going to get into a little bit on the hosting and environment there with GoDaddy? You bring up a couple of interesting topics potentially there. Not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, but we talk a lot about hosting and where to host. Is that a service that your company offers or provides recommendations on? Maybe that's a first good question.
Sure. There are a couple different options there. One of the things we always recommend to people is wherever you're going to go host your website, don't move your domain name from GoDaddy or Network Solutions or wherever you have it registered, keep it there. And then just change your DNS records to point it someplace else. Because there's some companies, it's very hard to get your domain back. They have to legally do it, but it can take a month, because there's no speedy. But then for hosting, there's a lot of good hosts out there. HostMonster, Bluehost, I'm blanking on some of the others. But a good place to start is what platform are you going to use for your website? Are you doing something like WordPress or one of the other easily templated systems?
Yep.
Or do you need integration into something else? There's a lot of good, very, very inexpensive hosting options out there.
And a lot of times companies will rely on, as you mentioned, they'll secure their own domain, but you got to remember you got to host it. And one of the services that PME 360 offers is dedicated hosting, as you mentioned, for an application such as WordPress. Our local Press 360 platform is a WordPress technology. We'll host that account within our hosting environment on a dedicated server. So like you mentioned, register the domain. You're always going to have that parked, and from a domain name setting standpoint, that's really what's important. And we've run into it a lot where some clients are hosting with a large provider such as GoDaddy. It's not on a dedicated hosting environment. There's hacks, there's spam. Ryan, you can talk a little bit more about that, but the importance of having a dedicated server is critical.
Yeah, not all servers are created equal, and especially when you're in a shared environment, you can run into some problems with being on the same shared server as some of the spammers and low-level sites that are out there, and we're seeing it affect some of our clients. So just be careful.
I mean, yeah, you need almost more security out in hosted world, whether you're on a dedicated server, or whether you're hosting it yourself or whatever you're doing. It's important to make sure that your provider is keeping everything up to date.
Exactly. Yeah.
And using good passwords, which we'll get to later. There's a lot of things. You think it's easy, but you actually need to put some thought into how you're going to host and what you're going to have out there available to people, because getting hacked can be unpleasant.
Yep.
The other thing that people complain a lot about now is spam. And again, if you do something like, Google email or Microsoft Office 365, all those have very good built-in spam filters that really can reduce a lot of that headache, as opposed to the deluge of AOL type of email that you get, that you just don't have any of those modern filters. So one more reason to do that. And then, always managing and keeping track of your email. Let's skip over that. Security is another big thing, as we were talking about with hosted, but even, locally on premise, when you start getting a small office and you start getting some things on site, I can't tell you how many clients I go to and their passwords are password 1 or the name of the company with a letter after it or whatever. they're just asking to get hacked. Just from sheer dumb luck from a hacker standpoint, not because they've been targeted. People try to come up with, a lot of the security bulletins or whatever say, use letters and numbers and combinations of things to get, a more secure password. And that's great, but the problem with a funky password like that, it's very, very hard to remember.
Yep.
So people put it on a Post-it note. Well, that's not really good either. I recommend to people to make really long passwords, but make them out of simple words, like phone, blue, grass, and then some letters after it. Because you're making a 10 or 12-digit password, which means brute force takes a really long time. But it's easy to remember. And by changing the combination of them, you can have a whole variety of passwords that aren't complete duplicates of each other. And then you got to change them frequently. You can't leave the same password on your bank account for 10 years and think you're never going to have a problem.
That's a good point.
The other thing is, firewalls. I'm a big fan of them. Not only do they give people like me on the IT side the ability to, give people access and things on their client side, but also, it's like putting a deadbolt on your home door. You wouldn't leave, your front door unlocked. And those little routers that you get from Comcast or from, AT&T are really not designed for, high-level protection. They're good, but it's a good firewall can save you a lot of headache. You can also use them if you've got users that you are concerned about. You want to keep them off of social networking sites, or you want to keep them from, streaming too much stuff off the internet, or, going to inappropriate sites. The firewall can do that automatically and not make you go over to them and say, please stop doing this, please stop doing this.
And this is, Tim, and this is something that Bullet can take care of, right? I mean, you guys go in and we'll set up a client, install some firewalls. Is that part of your service offering?
Absolutely. Really, kind of everything I'm talking about today is something that we can help our clients with. Some of it we have expertise in, some of it we can come to, other companies to, help facilitate some of them.
Very good.
The other thing that companies face, which is kind of the buzz, is BYOD, bring your own device. Back when I was in corporate, we controlled everything about people's BlackBerries. We bought them for them, we programmed for them, we gave them to them. You use this for only work stuff, you can't load anything else, blah, blah, blah. Well, now, with the plethora of various devices out there, people come to work, hey, I bought a new, Galaxy S, 300, and what can I do with it, And then businesses are forced to worry about, their information on that device along with all the games they're downloading from, the internet. And businesses need to be conscious of that. What else are people doing, carrying around our whole business on their mobile device?
Right, right.
And then the cloud, one of my favorite subjects. Because in reality, although we're going to get to a stage where the cloud is, where applications are really cloud-based, right now it's really marketing. People are taking, any application that we use in the business every day, putting it in usually just a remote desktop connection, Citrix connection, and allowing you connecting it and calling it a cloud app. And that's great because if you don't have the infrastructure like to run, I had a client yesterday that did QuickBooks Enterprise in the cloud environment and kept them from having to have a server and all that. And it works great, but it's not, it still requires a client on your side. So people are falling for some of the marketing for that, but they just need to really look at whatever apps they think they might need and whether it's truly, are they going to be using it at home, or are they going to be able to use it on their mobile device. But one of the things that is great in the cloud is storage and backups. There's any number of, I listed these because they're free and they're easy. The Apple's iCloud, Dropbox, Google's Drive, SkyDrive, they all give you great space. They're great for a small business, either free or inexpensively, to have a shared drive out in space. So whether your company's all diversified, you can use some service like this, put your documents out there, in a few minutes it's available to everybody. It's a nice, easy way. You get automatic backups too. You know, you don't have some little server back in the closet that, you know, some secretary is supposed to go change the tape in every day.
Right.
Well,
That happens a lot.
In your point there, though, is it secure? I mean, that's really the big question, right?
It depends on the service you choose. These are very reputable and have passed a lot of the HIPAA compliance, and there's DOD has a bunch of, I don't know if these have actually passed the DOD ones, but whatever you want to choose, and at the end of the slides I've got some other, Mosey and IBAC got some other ones. Before you sign up for the service, you know, they all have disclaimers. They all have the security, you know, how we encrypt and how we get it, and if you lose your passwords, how you get back into it, and it's important to know that. But most of them are very secure, or more secure than your local on-site, because you never backed it up and you don't have a firewall, and it's on a computer that doesn't have secure passwords, and you know.
And really, I mean, a business owner could run their business in the cloud and not have to worry about, well, maybe this is better asked as a question than as a point. You know, do you see business owners doing everything in the cloud and not having to rely on having their own internal servers, et cetera? I mean, what do you see out there?
We're starting to see more and more of that, especially for new businesses starting up that have, you know, a few employees, 5, 10 employees. Absolutely. You know, they sign up for, they're kind of taking two paths, either the Google path or the Microsoft path. You know, they sign up for the Google Business Services, they get their own domain name, they do their email there, they store their company documents there. As long as you're okay with that interface, it's great. Same thing with Microsoft. When you're buying, you know, the new Office 2013, it comes automatically linked in the SkyDrive.
Yep.
Create a business account, you can share documents that way, you can get a Microsoft 365 email address, and unless you have, again, another business application, it's a great way to do it, especially if you've got a diverse, geographically diverse workforce. You know, you don't have to email documents back and forth, which those of us that run email servers cringe at because it always makes a mess. But absolutely it works great. You know, all those, the Googles, the Microsofts, and the other hosting companies for email, you know, you connect your iPhone to it or your Droid to it or whatever to it.
Sure.
It works seamlessly. You know, and you get all the benefits, reliability, uptime, you know, of a big corporate data center without having to pay for it. If you're not going down the cloud and you're still doing, you know, your own things on site, is you got to do a backup and then you got to test it. And test it doesn't mean looking at the logs and saying, oh yeah, it backed up. It means going someplace else and trying to get your files back. You know, if you've got that critical QuickBooks file that has your entire life and billing in it, it means see if you can pull it down and open it up on somebody else's QuickBooks. I can't tell you how many times we've had clients, you know, call us in like, oh, I've been backing up, you know, and, you know, my computer exploded last night, so I just need to get everything back. Like, oh, well, your backup hasn't run successfully for, you know, 6 months. Is that a big deal? You know?
It can put a company out of business, especially a small business.
Oh, absolutely. You know, or they just have to, you know, spend hundreds of hours trying to get things back, and you're never going to recover that information.
Absolutely.
You know, and then as servers, you know, you guys host dedicated servers, which is great, unless clients really have a need for, you know, some sort of integration or, you know, big data on site. There's less and less reason every day to have any kind of local service. Host them outside, you get the uptime, you get somebody paying attention to it. You know, it's important. There are still things that need to be on site, but it's becoming less every day. We talked a little bit about mobile devices. There are, it's kind of an exciting time for tablets and laptops and desktops. I mean, a year ago, when we were sort of getting into the medical space 2 or 3 years ago, everybody wanted to run their whole world on an iPad. You know, and iPads are great. They have led the revolution on, you know, tablets, but they can only really run applications that were designed for the iPad. And now with Droid pads, you can do more, and then with the Microsoft Surface and with Windows 8 on so many more tablets and laptops that convert into tablets, and there's just a plethora of devices that are out there. one thing we talk to clients about, like, well, what phone should I get? What tablet should I get? And it goes back to the Mac versus PC, same argument. If you have a Mac at home and you have an iPad and you have a Mac at work, get an iPhone. There may be a Droid feature you want, but don't try to convince your wife or yourself to try to learn some new interface. Stick with what you know.
Yeah.
If you have no allegiance, I tend to push people towards the Droids just because I personally like them more. The Surface is a wonderful tablet, though. If you've got, as is some of Dell and HP, both have convertible tablets, but they run in these Windows applications. So if you've got to load, QuickBooks or that goofy legal application you have or whatever, it will, it has a USB port. You can load all that software on there, whereas a Droid or an iPad, you would have to remotely access it.
And Tim, this is a great slide here because in our world, right, just to apply this slide from a mobile standpoint, it's every search has gone so mobile as well, right? People are searching for businesses. Just to interject here, not to interrupt, but just look at all of these different options, and what we run into a lot is websites that do not render well on these devices. And for the clients that we work with and individuals that are listening in as well here, it's important that your website and your web technology, which is something that obviously that PME 360 handles, you want to have your site render on all of these devices. So it is an exciting time for mobile, and mobile devices are going to, if they have not already, I haven't checked the latest statistics, they're going to surpass traditional desktop search. So I just wanted to interject that here while I had a minute to talk a little bit about that.
Ask all you want also gives me a break to stop talking for a second. Besides just search, I think it's also tablets and other mobile devices are surpassing PC sales.
Yep.
Desktops are really
are
going away. I think they'll still be around, but I think they will be more of an all-in-one device. It happens to be a tablet with a keyboard that sits on your desk. I mean,
Yep.
it's going to stop being the tower that we have to hide someplace and run all the wires around to.
Sure.
The other thing is, wireless broadband, remote access. We've been able to do it for a long time, but with, mobile Wi-Fi devices and, tablets that can go anywhere, clients can really do their work anywhere. If they think it through and buy the right devices, there's a lot of opportunity out there because you don't need to come to your desk and sit there and plug away anymore. I mean, it's not the world we live in. The other thing that I like to talk to people about is their internet connection. 3 or 4 years ago, people at their offices, they had bonded T1s, or they had, circuits that also fed their phone systems, and they paid, close to $1,000 for them. You want to be sure to go back and revisit those. We come across clients, especially when we come in and take over, that have had the same internet service for years, and they're paying a lot of money, and they can cancel that and get, a Comcast cable connection or fiber
Sure.
if their building has it, and save thousands of dollars every month. And people, they don't seem to think about that all the time, and it can be a huge cost savings to clients. Same thing on phone systems. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but everybody knows how their home phone works. They get it from the cable company, or they get it from AT&T or whoever, and they have a copper and they answer it, or they just have their cell phones. Bigger businesses have the big fancy phone systems that are great and lovely and cost a fortune. But there are a lot of good opportunities, again, for that small business running totally in the cloud, where they're storing their information there, their emails all in the cloud, is to do, voice over IP on a per phone basis, on a monthly basis. RingCentral 8x8 are just a couple of choices. There's 100 of them out there.
What's the most cost-effective, Tim, in your opinion?
Depending on your size, doing 8x8 or RingCentral or one of the other asterisk type of things out there is very cost-effective. It can be $20 a month per phone line for unlimited calls.
Right.
And that phone can be wherever you want it to be. As long as you have a decent internet connection, you can unplug it, take it home and plug it in, and have your business phone at home. Or if your wife will let you, take it with you on vacation and plug it in wherever you are and have that same phone line. It makes it very portable, and you can even get, most of those services have soft phones, so you install them on your computer, fire them up, and just like we're having this call through the internet, you can do the same type of things. Integrate into Outlook, you can make your life very, very easy doing dialing that way. It can be
Sure.
nice. And there's a lot of opportunity out there because people, again, if you started your business 3 years ago, you've got some sort of traditional phone system or, leasing from somebody, and it's expensive. There's a lot of other choices out there.
Yep.
Software, we've kind of talked about it as we've gone through, the normal type of things, Adobe, Microsoft. Scanning comes up a lot as we're all trying to go paperless and we all want to work from wherever and be mobile. Good desktop scanners can save you. We scan all your pieces of paper in there. One thing I spend a lot of time personally is reporting via Excel, and that's really the evil part of it. People run their businesses by dumping all this information into Excel instead of into a database or into some sort of web-based system where they can really track all this information. That's usually as businesses grow from, the owner in his basement, tracking his sales or tracking, inventory or whatever, to where they've kind of grown up a little bit and now they need, okay, well, how did I really do last month? What am I really selling? And, making that transition from looking at some Excel sheet to looking at a real-time reporting system is a step that businesses need to make at some point in time. And then the other thing I see a lot is CRM via Excel. CRM, sales is hard for everybody, and yet it's such a key part to any of our businesses. We always want more, and I think I don't remember it's Tiger or the other one that's again $20 a month for a web-based, fully serviced CRM.
Sure.
Where you can really track all your contacts instead of trying to do it.
Yeah, and to take, you talk about taking that business to that next level. CRM is crucial, and it surprises me how many businesses just don't use it. And it doesn't have to be, there's a lot of features and benefits to, robust CRM platforms. Hey, okay, you don't have to necessarily perfect all of them, okay? Over time, you'll learn them, but just start to work with one of them and get comfortable with it because it's critical, and it's something that, there's a lot of great features as some of the things you mentioned here, Salesforce, and I'm not familiar with the other two, but there's a lot of great technologies, a lot of great platforms out there, and it's crucial, especially from a sales standpoint, as you mentioned. And it's really retention, right? So there's a lot of great retention tools. We pitch it all the time, how to stay in touch with your audience, how to, actively engage. Excellent point, and we see CRM via Excel, and it's scary, right? You've got to have something more robust than that.
Yeah, you're right. It really is the next step, both from the reporting standpoint and the CRM, is to make the leap forward. And I think people look at it and say, oh, it's too daunting. There's 50 fields on here. I'm never going to fill all that out. Well, start with name and phone number.
Right. Exactly.
And develop that database, and start a constant contact campaign from that list, because now you suddenly have it, rather than the 6 scraps of paper that are on your desk.
Exactly. And it's got to be it's a learned behavior that has to be incorporated. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because people people say, oh, I want to be paperless, and yet first thing they do when they get an email or when they get something is they print it out so they can read it. It really is a behavior that needs to be taught, that deal with it online, get it in your CRM, get it on your calendar, respond to the email there, do whatever it is so that you're living and breathing in the device instead of printing it out.
Sure. Well, and not only that, and I think the behavior process, you're right, and I think if you have the tendency to do that, because I know I'm guilty of it, is, hey, okay, I've got stuff written down every which way, I'm in my car, I'm at my desk. At the end of the week, take some time and input it into your CRM, get everything there, flush it out, clear off your desk, right? So I agree with you. If you can do it real time online, great. If you're, just set aside some time, whether it's weekly or possibly even daily, right, depending on your workload, to get it in somewhere. And that's a learned behavior that's crucial. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy trying to remember where you put a piece of paper, for that matter.
Absolutely. And the more, the more things that you can do online, the more likely you are to do that. If you've got some piece of your business that still has to be paper-based, you continue to use it as, as a crutch to,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to print this out, I'm going to deal with it because I got it somewhere over here, I got to print something else out.
I think all of what you're talking about comes back to, creating systems that work independently of the business owner so that you can grow and that other people can step in and fill, key roles in your business. And you can't really do that if everything you're doing is jotted down on a sticky note or in some, tucked in some folder somewhere. So you've got to start making those steps to automate and create systems.
For sure.
Absolutely. In our world, one of the big changes that helped us move forward was to get an automated quoting and ticketing system. And it was hard in the beginning, to take the time to go and put in all the part numbers and put all the prices numbers, and then create the ticket from it. But, 6 months later, you start getting the history, you start realizing where you're having problems, you start, selling the things that make you money and start, making sure that everything gets invoiced through to the client. I mean, there's some pain to it, but the end result can be so helpful to really make that leap to move forward.
There's a learning curve with any of the stuff that you're mentioning here, but it's worth doing. And, for a long time, we put some things off too, and it's painful. I mean, but you only cry maybe once or twice, and then after that, it starts to get easier and actually, takes some things off your plate.
Yeah, you do reach that day comes where you're like, wow, that was helpful.
Exactly.
I was able to use that tool to, have an add-on service to this client or to remember to go back to this client because he said come back in 6 months and I'll buy something. Yeah. The day you have that aha moment is a great thing.
Absolutely.
So here I just have some links that we've talked about, the various backup softwares besides Microsoft and Google. And also I threw in the Microsoft, the basic email package only because even for myself who's been to it 20 or 30 times, it's challenging to find it on there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then those two inexpensive CRMs that I mentioned.
Excellent.
That's was my presentation. Do you guys have some questions or some other things?
Yeah, that was my
about?
next question, Tim, is how individuals can get a hold of you. It looks like we've got that information up. Tim, do you do a lot of speaking and, I know that we know each other through the Lincoln Park Chamber of Commerce. This, something that's valuable here, and we're glad you came on. I know it's, it's content that, you might not think about it every day as a small business owner, but you have to address it, right? So, I think what you presented today was very valuable, and we look forward to our audience enjoying it and using it to benefit their small business.
I know I took a lot of notes because there's some things there that kind of get away from you. As a business owner, I'm like, wow, I don't remember the last time we changed our passwords. And then I'm like, oh, I just moved to a new computer. Am I backing anything up anymore? You just forget. It's like, having somebody on your team that,
Or you assume. That's what people...
You do.
Yeah. It's a common
You know
problem.
what happens when you assume, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing that I forgot to mention back on passwords was even though you bring in someone like my company or, many of the other good companies out there, make sure that you get that you have a current copy of all the passwords from them. The IT people you tend to keep for a long time and become very, very trusted, but it's still important that it's your business and you need to know what those IT people are doing.
Sure.
Well, and then, to that point, changing passwords when an employee leaves, right?
Absolutely.
So if
and
these
turning off their
employees,
accounts. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I had a client, a couple weeks ago come, oh yeah, we let these 3 people go because they were stealing. You don't think we should have turned off their account?
Yeah, right, right.
So yeah, those types of security. And, when people are bringing their own devices, I mean, you need to be sure that your company email is taken off their device. Otherwise, they continue to have all that information.
Tim, do you think that we've reached a point now with technology where it evolves so rapidly that any small business that's serious about growing or surviving can they do this on their own? Can they learn, how to keep track of all of this and keep up with all of this on their own?
No, and they shouldn't try.
Right.
Part of that's because this is my business, and of course I want everyone to come and hire us. But there's too many moving parts not to have a professional come help you.
Right.
And it doesn't take a lot of time or money, but getting that outside of ice and quickly solving problems and moving on and knowing who to call when you've got a problem is very important.
Yeah, I just think every business needs like a panel of experts that are really very specific with what they know and their knowledge. And I think technology is one of those things where I don't know why you try to mess with figuring it out yourself, especially if you're serious about your business and you really want to grow. It just doesn't make any sense.
When I think, it's a hindrance to growth, I think, if you're not trying to pull in experts, because otherwise you're trying to do it yourself and you don't have time in the day to do it. You want to run your business, and we see it all the time. Ryan, the same application can be said. Tim, it's an excellent statement. There's too many moving parts. And it's the same with search. It's the same with online marketing. These go hand in hand, and you can spend days and days and days, and we've spent years learning what we've learned, and it changes so fast. And Tim, I'm sure you can say the same thing.
Right. I mean, we spend, just as you do, every time something new comes out, we're sitting around, pushing buttons and seeing what this does and seeing what that does and how we can use it for our clients. And for us, it takes a lot of time, but, we can go forth and sell it to our clients, whereas if a business owner has to do the same thing, learning what the new widget does
it's impossible.
Doesn't help his business move forward.
No.
It's wasted time to him. But IT is expensive, and people think they can save money and, use money elsewhere in their business, but they undervalue their own time.
I think if you invest in IT, ahead of time, you're going to save yourself so many headaches down the road. So
Absolutely.
many.
Yeah, I think the perception is that it is expensive, but really if you add in the time that it saves you and then your ability to streamline and free up your time as a business owner and do things better than your competition, now you're looking at it as it can produce a return that can help you get to that next level and avoid a catastrophic event that puts you out of business.
Right. It's critical.
It is. It really is.
Tim, thanks so much for your time this morning, and look forward to continued business relationship here. Really appreciate it. Ryan, thank you as well, and thanks everyone for listening in to our PME 360 Local Business Growth Podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. That was great.